Extinction didn't erase their terror, not in the slightest. It sealed their legacy in blood and bone. For over 600 million years, our Earth was a proving ground for predators, where nature constantly rewrote the rules of survival. From dense jungles to open oceans to skies filled with murder on wings, prehistoric life wasn't just about survival, it was about dominance. The story of Smilodon, the saber-toothed cat, always fascinates me, especially how the very first remains were initially mistaken for those of a hyena. It just goes to show how misleading early fossil evidence can be. Imagine being an apex predator, ruling the wild at the top of the food chain. Life at the top has its perks, of course, but even the most fearsome hunters aren't always the biggest beasts. When it comes to the predator game, size isn't everything. Yet, every so often, nature outdoes itself. It creates a carnivore so specialized, so perfectly adapted to hunting big game, that it seems almost mythical. These rare beasts develop weapons tailored specifically for tackling the giants of their time. And not too long ago, just a blink of an eye in Earth's timeline, one such feline prowled our planet. This wasn't just any big cat. This was the undisputed monarch of the Ice Age. Meet the Smilodon, the saber-toothed cat extraordinaire. With its iconic saber teeth and fierce appearance, the Smilodon is one of the most instantly recognizable extinct predators. This status has only been solidified by its portrayal in popular films like Ice Age. But while the world knows it as a saber-toothed cat, it didn't start out that way. Rewind the clock about 160 years and picture yourself in Brazil. It's here that our tale begins, with a discovery that would perplex the scientific community. When the first Smilodon remains were unearthed, paleontologists didn't immediately recognize them as belonging to a cat. In fact, their initial guess was way off the mark. Based on some isolated cheek teeth that bore an uncanny resemblance to those of modern hyenas, they dubbed this new find Hyena neogaea. However, within a couple of years, the tides of discovery brought forth a tsunami of new fossils. Suddenly, scientists weren't just looking at a few teeth, but a veritable jigsaw puzzle of prehistoric proportions. Foot bones, skull fragments, and those iconic canines, which, by the way, seemed almost comically oversized for any mouth, painted a very different picture. As the pieces fell into place, it became clear that this was no hyena. Instead, they were dealing with a completely new genus of felid, one that was not only massive in size, but also built like a prehistoric tank. This feline was far more robust than any modern cat, a true heavyweight champion of the Ice Age. In light of this revelation, a new name was in order. Thus, Smilodon Populator was born. Smilodon, meaning knife tooth, and Populator, roughly translating to the destroyer or he who brings devastation. If you're thinking that sounds like the title of a heavy metal album, you're not wrong, and it's a fitting moniker for a predator that redefined what it meant to be lethal. With its new identity established, the scientific community dove headfirst into unraveling the Smilodon's family tree. This quest for understanding continues to this day, with researchers currently placing our knife-toothed friend in the extinct subfamily Smilodontini. This subfamily is home to most of what we colloquially call saber-toothed tigers. though saber-toothed cats is more accurate since these ancient felines aren't closely related to modern tigers or any living cats for that matter. In fact, their closest living relatives might be members of the felinae subfamily, which includes our domestic kitties. Within the Smilodontini, Smilodon found itself in an even more exclusive club, the Smilodontini, or as some paleontologists like to call them, the Dirk-Toothed cats. This group is pretty exclusive, with only 5 known genera calling it home. But what Smilodontini lacks in diversity, it makes up for in star power, thanks to Smilodon. As research progressed, scientists discovered that Smilodon wasn't a lone standout. It was more like a prehistoric trio, with 3 distinct members, each bringing something unique to the table. S. Gracilis, S. Fatalis, and S. Populator. Now, if you found yourself face to face with any of these species, you probably wouldn't be too concerned with which one was about to turn you into lunch. But they did have their differences. First up, we have S. Gracilis, the elder statesman of the group. This OG appeared in North America about 2.5 million years ago, descending from an even older genus called Meganterion. Next came S. Fatalis, strutting onto the scene roughly 1 million years later. Last, but certainly not least, S. Populator made its grand entrance about 600,000 years after Fatalis, fashionably late to the Ice Age party. S. Gracilis, while no slouch in the size department, was the runt of the litter, tipping the scales at about the same weight as a modern jaguar. S. Fatalis, living up to its name, was a step up in the terror department, matching an African lion in size, but packing on extra muscle like a feline bodybuilder. We're talking about 280 kilos, or 620 pounds, of prehistoric fury. That's on par with the largest tigers roaming the earth today. But S. Populator dominated them all. This behemoth pushed the boundaries of feline physiology, with the largest known specimens estimated to have weighed in at a jaw-dropping 470 kilos, or 1040 pounds. To put that in perspective, that's about the same as a medium-sized polar bear. Interestingly, unlike many modern big cats, Smilodons didn't seem to be too hung up on gender norms. Studies suggest that there wasn't a significant size difference between males and females, a trait scientists call low sexual dimorphism. In practical terms, this means that regardless of whether you were facing a male Smilodon or a female Smilodon, you were in equal danger. I sometimes find myself thinking about the Smilodon, or saber-toothed cat, not just as a big cat, but as a prehistoric tank. It wasn't just large, it was built for serious power. Its heel bone alone was a marvel of natural engineering, robust and elongated. Some paleontologists even speculate that these Ice Age acrobats could have outleaped modern lions, which have been observed clearing heights of 15 feet. Imagine that! A cat the size of a bear capable of leaping over a 1-story building. But the Smilodon's athletic prowess didn't stop at its fancy footwork. If modern big cats have arms that could crush you, Smilodon's forelimbs took it to the next level. We're talking about limbs that were approximately 20% thicker than what you'd expect for a cat of its size, giving it incredible strength, surpassing even that of the larger American lion. And at the end of those muscular arms, Smilodon was further armed with fully retractable claws, razor-sharp and curved like prehistoric scimitars. They were proportionally enormous, even for a cat of Smilodon size. We're talking about claws twice the size of a Siberian tiger's and even longer than those of a Kodiak brown bear, an animal that can weigh twice as much as a Smilodon. These weren't just weapons. They were nature's equivalent of grappling hooks, perfect for latching onto large prey. But let's be real. When we think of Smilodon, it's not its impressive vertical leap or powerful forearms that come to mind. It's all about those teeth, those iconic, impossibly long canines that have captured imaginations for generations. Now, saber teeth aren't unique to Smilodon. Nature has played around with this dental design in various mammals and even some non-mammals throughout history. But Smilodon perfected it, taking the concept to an entirely new level. What made Smilodon's fangs special wasn't just their presence, but their sheer, audacious length. We're talking about canines so long they protruded well beyond the lower jaw, a feature that was uncommon even among other saber-toothed cats. To put it in perspective, Smilodon's canines could grow up to 8 inches, or 20 centimeters long. That's longer than many modern kitchen knives. They were precision instruments of prehistoric destruction, shaped like deadly daggers with sharp points and smooth, narrow sides. These teeth were designed to pierce deep into flesh with devastating efficiency. Here's where things get really interesting. You'd expect a predator with teeth like that to have a powerful bite to match, but surprisingly, studies have shown that Smilodon's bite was relatively weak, only about 1,000 newtons, which is 4 times weaker than a modern lion's. So, how did it kill? Well, that's been a subject of much debate among paleontologists. One popular theory suggests that Smilodon was the original ambush predator. Picture this: a Smilodon hidden in dense vegetation, waiting for the perfect moment. Then, with a powerful leap, it pounces on its unsuspecting prey. Using those muscular forelimbs and grappling hook claws, it pins down its victim. With precision, it sinks its saber teeth into the prey's soft underbelly, causing massive internal damage and blood loss. But not everyone buys this gut-stabbing hypothesis. Many researchers favor a different but equally grim scenario. They propose that Smilodon used its powerful build to quickly overpower its prey, then delivered a precise, lethal bite to the throat. This would have caused severe blood loss and suffocation, a quick, if not particularly pleasant end for its unfortunate victims. Adding fuel to this theory is the discovery that Smilodon could open its jaw to an incredible 120 degrees. That's almost twice as wide as a human can manage. With a gape like that, pretty much every neck in the Ice Age would have been fair game. But Smilodon wasn't just brawn and teeth. Brain scans of Smilodon skulls suggest that these prehistoric predators had excellent coordination, sharp hearing, and top-notch vision. Their eye socket shape hints at binocular vision, giving them the depth perception needed to judge distances accurately, crucial for a predator that relied on ambush tactics. And if all that wasn't enough, they were fast too. Many Smilodon fossils show trauma to their sternums, the kind of injury you'd expect from high-speed collisions. This suggests that not only were they quick on their feet, but they were also willing to risk life and limb, or at least a bruised chest, in pursuit of their next meal. Smilodon's unique traits, along with its powerful weaponry, made it a versatile hunter capable of taking down a wide variety of megafaunal prey. The specific animals it targeted varied based on the region it called home. In North America, Their prey included oversized versions of animals we recognize today, giant bison, camels, and if the opportunity arose, even mastodons and Columbian mammoths. Yes, these cats were taking down creatures that dwarfed modern elephants. In South America, Smilodon's targets were equally impressive and diverse, including creatures like Toxodon, Litopterna, various species of Glyptodon, along with more familiar animals such as horses and camelids. Some evidence even suggests that Smilodon occasionally went after caimans, cementing its status as a top predator. We know what Smilodon ate thanks to skeletal evidence such as tooth marks on bones, or Smilodon remains found alongside those of their prey, providing vital clues about its diet. One big question that's still hotly debated in paleontology circles is whether Smilodon was a lone hunter or a team player. This isn't just academic curiosity. Knowing whether Smilodon hunted in packs could tell us a lot about its social structure and what kind of prey it typically targeted. One of the strongest pieces of evidence supporting the idea that Smilodons live socially comes from the La Brea tar pits in California. These California tar pits are a gold mine for paleontologists, preserving countless Ice Age animals that got stuck in the sticky asphalt. The La Brea tar pits? I've always found them a bit unsettling, not just because of the image of animals hopelessly trapped, but because of who they trapped. It wasn't just the herbivores. Predators, too, got stuck trying to eat the already trapped. Smilodon fossils are the second most common find in these pits, with over 166,000 bones attributed to them. This high number has led some scientists to suggest that Smilodon might have been a social animal. The reasoning goes like this. In modern cat species, the more social ones tend to be more responsive to distress calls. So, if one Smilodon got stuck, it might have called for help, attracting other members of its group who then also got stuck. It's a grim thought, but it could explain why we find so many Smilodon remains in one place. Another fascinating clue pointing to Smilodon's possible social behavior is surprisingly touching, though in a prehistoric, slightly grim sense. Some Smilodon fossils show signs of severe injuries or disabilities that would have made hunting nearly impossible. Yet, these individuals survived well into adulthood. This has led some paleontologists to propose what they call pseudo-healthcare among Smilodons. The idea is that these injured cats were cared for by their fellow Smilodons, much like how modern lions or wolves might support injured members of their pride or pack. One famous example is a Smilodon fossil that shows signs of hip dysplasia from a young age, yet managed to survive to adulthood. It's hard to imagine how such an animal could have hunted successfully on its own, leading to the heartwarming, if speculative, image of Smilodon families looking after their own. But not everyone's convinced by the Smilodon social club theory. Some researchers point out that Smilodon remains found outside of predator traps like La Brea tend to be more isolated. They argue that this suggests a more solitary lifestyle, more in line with many modern big cats. Regardless of whether Smilodon was a team player or a loner, one thing's for it was at the top of the food chain. But that doesn't mean it didn't have competition. The Ice Age was a time of giants, and Smilodon wasn't the only predator with an appetite for mammoth-sized meals. Two of Smilodon's biggest rivals were the American lion and the dire wolf. Now, if you're picturing the dire wolves from Game of Thrones, it's worth noting that while real dire wolves were impressive, they weren't quite as monstrous as their fictional counterparts. But they were formidable predators in their own right, and isotope analysis shows that they had a diet very similar to Smilodons. In other words, these predators were often competing for the same prey. So how did Smilodon stack up against its competitors? Well, when it came to the American lion, it was probably a bit of a standoff. The American lion had size on its side, being one of the largest cats to ever exist. But Smilodon had those impressive canines, which likely served as a pretty effective deterrent. Most likely, these two apex predators tried to avoid each other when possible, but when conflicts did occur, it could have gone either way. The dire wolf, on the other hand, seems to have often come out second best in confrontations with Smilodon. Evidence from La Brea suggests that dire wolves would frequently abandon their kills when a Smilodon showed up. It's not hard to imagine why, given those sabers being on full display 24/7. Most predators would probably decide that discretion was the better part of valor. But lions and wolves weren't the only competition Smilodon had to worry about. The Ice Age was also the time of the short-faced bear, a beast that could make even Smilodon look small by comparison. Some of these bears reached truly dinosaurian proportions, rivaling medium-sized sauropods in weight. However, these ursine giants were more omnivorous than Smilodon, which likely reduced direct competition. Plus, bears tend to be solitary creatures, so if a group of Smilodons encountered one, the bear would likely have decided that this particular picnic basket wasn't worth the trouble. Now, we've talked a lot about Smilodon's impressive hunting adaptations, but there's one question we haven't addressed yet. How on earth did it eat with those ridiculous teeth? After all, those saber-like fangs seem like they would have been quite the obstacle during feeding. Well, Smilodon had a solution for that, too. Unlike most predators that can chomp down from the front, Smilodon was equipped with specialized slicing teeth called carnassials. These teeth, situated on the sides of the mouth, worked like biological scissors, shearing through meat with ease. To eat, Smilodon would have turned its head to the side, using these carnassials to slice off manageable chunks of meat, while its saber teeth stayed out of the way. If this eating style sounds familiar, that's because you might have seen it in action. Many modern cats, and even other predators, use a similar technique when tackling tough pieces of meat. It's a prime example of nature's problem-solving. When life gives you saber teeth, you adapt your eating style accordingly. With its unique adaptations and hunting prowess, Smilodon carved out a vast empire for itself. Between its three species, it achieved a distribution across the Western Hemisphere that would make any modern predator green with envy. In North America, S. Gracilis and S. Fatalis roamed from coast to coast, reaching as far north as Alberta, Canada. Meanwhile, in South America, S. Fatalis and S. Populator established a domain stretching all the way down to Patagonia. But Smilodon wasn't just geographically widespread, it was also adaptable. Fossils have been found in a diverse array of environments, from grasslands and plains to woodlands and closed forests, from savannas to subtropical forest, and even mammoth steppes. This adaptability allowed Smilodon to live alongside a veritable who's who of Pleistocene megafauna. We're talking about a world where you might encounter short-faced bears, proboscideans, ground sloths, the size of cars, armored glyptodonts, the rhino-like toxodon, camels, deer, horses, bison, and even terror birds. It's hard to imagine the world of the Ice Age. We picture mammoths, those giants wrapped in shaggy armor, but they weren't the scariest thing out there, not even close. There was another creature, a beast so massive and brutally engineered, it was less an animal and more a biological battering ram. Imagine the size of a mammoth, but fused with the destructive force of a medieval war machine. This was the true juggernaut of the Ice Age, Elasmotherium, a creature that should have defined Ice Age dominance from the very beginning. It's strange to think of a real-life version of the ice levels from video games, but with prehistoric cats and humans. Our ancestors first crossed paths with Smilodon around 25,000 years ago. Imagine being one of those early humans, armed with primitive tools, coming face to face with a saber-toothed cat. It's a terrifying thought. The relationship between humans and Smilodon was likely tense. We were competing for the same food sources, and by the time humans arrived, only the larger Fatalis and Populator remained. Bad timing indeed. Given that Meganterion, a possible predecessor of Smilodon, occasionally preyed on Homo erectus, it's easy to imagine Smilodon considering early humans as potential prey. But humans are resourceful. While there's no direct evidence yet of human-Smilodon confrontations, our superior technology and group tactics likely allowed us to turn the tables on these predators. In 2021, researchers discovered a petroglyph that seems to depict a group of humans observing a Smilodon from afar. It's a tantalizing glimpse into a world where our ancestors shared the landscape with these magnificent, terrifying creatures. But that coexistence didn't last. Smilodon disappeared from the earth. The youngest remains date back to around 10,000 years ago, about the same time humans were figuring out agriculture. The extinction of Smilodon continues to fuel debate. Some researchers believe humans played a significant role through direct competition or by altering habitats. Others are less convinced. The more widely accepted theory points to the Quaternary extinction event as the primary cause. This was a period of significant climate change that saw the disappearance of many large animal species in North and South America. As the megafauna that Smilodon relied on for food began to die out, the saber-toothed predator found itself in an increasingly precarious position. In a cruel twist of fate, the very adaptations that had made Smilodon such a successful hunter of large prey became a liability. Specialized to take down giants, Smilodon struggled to adapt to a world where those giants were disappearing. It was, in essence, too good at what it did, and when the world changed, it couldn't change with it. The extinction of Smilodon marked the end of an era. It was the last of the saber-toothed cats, not just in the Americas, but worldwide. With its passing, a lineage that had dominated the planet for over 20 million years came to an end. Its legacy resonates in museum exhibits, in our imaginations, and as a reminder of the fragile balance between species and their environments. As we face our own period of rapid change, the lesson of Smilodon is clear. Survival requires adaptation. Now, back to Elasmotherium. Imagine a rhinoceros that decided regular size wasn't intimidating enough. Multiply that by roughly 3, add the bulk of a small elephant, and crown it with a single horn so massive it could serve as a battering ram for medieval warfare. What you're picturing is still probably smaller than the reality of Elasmotherium. It wasn't just large, it was monumentally oversized. Standing 6.5 feet at the shoulder and stretching 15 feet from nose to tail, Elasmotherium weighed in at a staggering 5 tons of pure horn-equipped muscle. But the mements alone don't capture the true horror of encountering this beast. The defining feature, the element that transformed Elasmotherium from merely large to genuinely nightmarish, was the horn. Not horns, plural like its modern rhinoceros descendants, but a single, massive horn that could reach lengths of up to 6 feet. 6 feet of solid, pointed bone jutting from the center of its forehead like some prehistoric unicorn's fever dream. And unlike the mammoth's curved tusks, which were primarily tools for foraging and occasional defense, Elasmotherium's horn was purpose-built for devastation. It was perfectly positioned for charging attacks, designed to concentrate the full force of 5 tons of angry herbivore into a single, armor-piercing point. Any creature unfortunate enough to find itself on the receiving end of an Elasmotherium charge wasn't just facing injury, it was facing obliteration. The horn was just the beginning. Strip away that intimidating weapon, and you're still left with a creature that redefined what it meant to be perfectly adapted for the Ice Age. I've always been captivated by the creatures that managed to thrive during the last Ice Age. It's easy to picture mammoths, those woolly giants struggling against the cold. But there was another beast out there, one perfectly engineered for the harsh conditions. Elasmotherium. This wasn't just survival, it was dominance. The legs of this creature are where the story really begins. Unlike the mammoth's sturdy but slow limbs, Elasmotherium possessed legs that were both powerful and surprisingly agile. These weren't just for standing, they were the engine of a 5-ton charging machine. Mammoths distributed their weight evenly, but Elasmotherium was front-loaded. It was designed to turn every charge into a catastrophic collision. Millions of years of brutal efficiency honed into a single purpose: impact. Even the shoulder muscles were built to absorb the shock of high-speed collisions. What I find most fascinating is how Elasmotherium solved the energy problem that plagued so many Ice Age giants. While mammoths needed enormous amounts of vegetation, Elasmotherium's digestive system was optimized to extract maximum nutrition from the sparse grasses of the frozen steppes. Its skull, like a natural helmet, could withstand impacts that would have been fatal to other creatures. The entire head functioned as an organic siege engine. Mammoths relied on group protection, but Elasmotherium needed no such strategies. It was a solitary predator's nightmare, capable of defending its resources through sheer individual dominance. While mammoths huddled for warmth, Elasmotherium stood alone because nothing else posed a credible threat. And then, of course, there's the horn, that magnificent, terrifying horn, up to 6 feet in length, potentially weighing 100 pounds. Not a decoration, but a weapon that could punch through ice, tree trunks, anything that challenged it. It was longer than a parking space is wide, wielded with the precision of a medieval knight and the force of a freight train. Unlike modern rhinos, which carry their horns on their snouts, Elasmotherium's horn was mounted directly on the forehead, the optimal position for devastating charging attacks. The physics alone are frightening. A 5-ton projectile moving at 25 miles per hour. But it gets more interesting. The horn wasn't just a weapon. It was a snowplow, clearing feeding areas inaccessible to other herbivores. In a world of scarce food, that ability was life and death. Likely covered in keratin, constantly growing and self-sharpening, it was a permanent, ever-improving tool. Recent fossil evidence suggests the horn may have been even more formidable than we thought. Some specimens show bases that could have supported structures up to 8 feet long. An 8-foot horn on a 5-ton creature? There's no modern equivalent. Imagine being a saber-toothed cat, suddenly encountering something that could impale you from 8 feet away. The horn didn't just change how Elasmotherium fought, it changed how everything else lived. Somewhere in the frozen wilderness, there was a creature carrying a weapon that could end any confrontation before it began. The mammoth's tusks, impressive as they were, pale in comparison. This was domination made manifest. While mammoths adapted to environments that barely tolerated them, Elasmotherium claimed territories that actively welcomed their dominance. It wasn't just about survival, it was about control. The Eurasian steppe during that time seemed designed specifically for creatures like Elasmotherium. The silence surrounding the extinction of the Elasmotherium is genuinely haunting. For an animal that once defined the Ice Age landscape, its disappearance is perplexing. Mammoths managed to survive in various forms until roughly 4,000 years ago. Their survival story, impressive as it is, seems less like triumph and more like luck when you consider what happened to the giant rhino. For a creature built like a living battering ram, the occasional river valleys and scattered patches of woodland were paradise. No dense forest to navigate, no steep terrain to negotiate, just endless expanses of territory where speed, power, and intimidation ruled supreme. What makes Elasmotherium's territorial dominance truly remarkable is that they weren't just surviving in these conditions. They were thriving in areas where other megafauna couldn't establish permanent populations. The frozen steppes of Siberia, the windswept plains of Kazakhstan, the harsh grasslands of Central Asia, these were Elasmotherium's hunting grounds. Territories where the combination of extreme cold, sparse vegetation, and brutal competition eliminated most other large herbivores. The secret lay in their approach to resource management. While mammoth herds required vast areas to support their numbers, moving constantly to find sufficient food, Elasmotherium operated on a different principle entirely. They were territorial specialists, claiming specific ranges and defending them with the kind of aggressive efficiency that made migration unnecessary. That horn wasn't just a weapon. It was a property deed written in bone and enforced through violence. Consider the advantages this gave them during the harshest periods of the Ice Age. When food became scarce and competition intensified, mammoth herds had to keep moving, constantly searching for new feeding grounds while burning precious calories in the process. Elasmotherium simply cleared their territory of competitors and settled in for the long haul. They could access buried vegetation that other creatures couldn't reach, defend prime feeding areas that others couldn't claim, and maintain energy reserves that migration-dependent species couldn't match. The fossil record tells a story of creatures that weren't just surviving, they were prospering. Elasmotherium remains have been found across a range that stretched from Ukraine to Mongolia, a distribution that suggests not desperate wandering, but successful territorial expansion. These weren't refugees from climate change. They were the landlords of the Ice Age, collecting rent in the form of exclusive access to the best grazing areas. And unlike mammoth populations, which fluctuated dramatically with environmental changes, Elasmotherium populations remained relatively stable throughout their existence. This wasn't luck. It was the natural result of a survival strategy so effective that it made them nearly immune to the environmental press that devastated other megafauna. For a creature so perfectly adapted to Ice Age conditions, so dominant in its chosen environment, and so well equipped for survival, Elasmotherium's extinction presents one of paleontology's most perplexing mysteries. How do you eliminate something that appeared virtually indestructible? While mammoths managed to survive in various forms until roughly 4,000 years ago, with some populations persisting on isolated islands well into human civilization, Elasmotherium vanished from the fossil record around 39,000 years ago. This wasn't a gradual decline. It was a sudden, complete disappearance that left no descendants and precious few clues about what could have overwhelmed such a formidable creature. The conventional explanation points to climate change, but this theory has some serious problems. Elasmotherium had already survived multiple ice ages, numerous warming periods, and dramatic environmental shifts throughout its history. These were creatures that had proven themselves capable of adapting to changing conditions over millions of years. Why would this particular climate shift prove fatal when so many previous ones had been survived? Some researchers suggest human hunting preyers, but again, the evidence doesn't quite add up. While humans were certainly present in Elasmotherium's range during the late Pleistocene, the idea that early human populations could have systematically eliminated creatures this large and dangerous seems optimistic at best. Remember, we're talking about 5-ton animals armed with 6-eft horns and the temperament of a cornered badger. Even with primitive weapons, the cost-benefit analysis of hunting such creatures seems questionable. The most disturbing possibility is that Elasmotherium's very dominance contributed to its downfall. Their territorial nature, while advantageous during stable periods, may have prevented them from adapting to rapidly changing conditions. Unlike mammoths, which could migrate to more favorable areas, Elasmotherium populations may have been too committed to their territories to abandon them when conditions deteriorated. But here's the truly unsettling part. The disappearance was so complete that for centuries, scientists weren't even Elasmotherium had existed at all. Unlike mammoth remains, which are found regularly and in excellent condition, Elasmotherium fossils are rare and often fragmentary. It's almost as if something deliberately erased them from the archaeological record. Recent discoveries have added new layers to this mystery. Some fossils show evidence of stress markers and nutritional deficiencies that suggest the final populations were struggling with environmental press. Others display unusual growth patterns that might indicate disease or genetic problems. The picture emerging is of a species that didn't just disappear. It collapsed suddenly and catastrophically. Taken together, the evidence paints a grim picture. Whatever eliminated Elasmotherium was powerful enough to bring down a creature that had reigned unchallenged for ages, resilient, dominant, and built to endure. And yet it vanished with barely a trace. Elasmotherium wasn't just another Ice Age animal. It redefined dominance. The mammoth may have gotten the fame, but Elasmotherium earned the title of real titan of the Ice Age. But it wasn't the only behemoth history forgot. While it ruled the frozen steppes, another titan far to the south was the definition of giant altogether. Bigger than a mammoth, heavier than a T-Rex, and possibly the largest land mammal to ever walk the earth. When I envision the world that shaped our earliest ancestors, I typically imagine a landscape dominated by predators, saber-toothed cats, massive hyenas, and early humans huddled around fires. But what if one of the most significant competitors our ancestors faced wasn't a carnivore at all, but another primate? One so massive it would tower over any human alive today. Meet Dinopithecus ingens, the terrible ape of Pleistocene Africa. Standing over 5 feet tall when upright and weighing up to 330 pounds, it was nearly 5 times heavier than today's largest baboons. These colossal primates shared the African landscape with Australopithecus, an early Homo species, between roughly 3 to 2 million years ago. Yet despite their imposing presence during this pivotal chapter of prehistory, they remain virtually unknown outside of specialized scientific circles. Dinopithecus belongs to the family Cercopithecidae, the old world monkeys, rather than the hominoid family. Specifically, it's classified within the subfamily Papionini, alongside modern baboons, geladas, and mangabeys. Despite this taxonomic distance from humans, Dinopithecus represents one of the most remarkable examples of primate gigantism in the fossil record. The genus first entered scientific literature in 1938, when paleontologist Robert Broom described Dinopithecus ingens based on fossil remains from Sterkfontein near Pretoria, South Africa. The name itself tells a story. Dino, from the Greek for terrible or fearfully great, Pithecus, meaning ape or monkey, and ingens, meaning huge in Latin. A fitting title for a creature that pushed the boundaries of what we thought primates could become. Subsequent discoveries have primarily come from cave sites in South Africa, including Krumdraai and Cooper's Cave, locations famously associated with early hominin remains. Fossil evidence includes partial skulls, mandibles, and post-cranial elements that allow paleontologists to reconstruct its appearance and lifestyle. Most fossils date between 3 and 2 million years ago, placing Dinopithecus firmly in the Pliocene epoch alongside early Australopithecus and Homo species. Physically, Dinopithecus was a scaled-up baboon built for terrestrial power. Its skull alone meet up to 30 centimeters in males and featured an elongated muzzle, enlarged canines, and a prominent sagittal crest for anchoring massive jaw muscles, indicators of both feeding strength and male-male competition. The mandible was exceptionally robust, with a deep body adapted to handle powerful chewing forces far beyond what is seen in modern baboons. Dental analysis shows a heavy emphasis on grinding plant material. Large molars with thick enamel point to a diet that included fibrous vegetation, seeds, and tubers, foods that required prolonged mastication. These adaptations suggest Dinopithecus could exploit tough resources that smaller primates couldn't process efficiently, offering a survival edge in diverse or fluctuating environments. Still, for all that chewing power, it needed a body that could carry the weight literally. Though fossilized post-cranial remains are fragmentary, they leave no doubt. This was a ground dweller built like a fortress. The bones are dense, the muscle attachments oversized, and the proportions suggest a primate that moved low and heavy. It wasn't agile, but it didn't need to be. It was stable, durable, a four-limbed tank that could traverse both woodland and savanna. Now, here's where the social structure gets fascinating. Sexual dimorphism in Dinopithecus was extreme, even more pronounced than in modern baboons. Males may have weighed up to twice as much as females and bore significantly larger canines and cranial crests. This suggests intense male competition, likely involving physical confrontations and dominance displays, a social structure where size directly translated to reproductive success. Yet all this leaves Dinopithecus somewhere in the middle of its ecosystem. Its size positioned it as a mesopredator, both hunter and hunted. It likely fed on fruits, seeds, roots, and small animals, while remaining vulnerable to apex predators like saber-toothed cats or large hyenas. Its bulk, strength, and potential for aggressive defense would have made it a formidable opponent, one that early hominins may have respected, avoided, or even competed with. Modern baboons are notoriously territorial, confrontational, and quick to violence when threatened, and Dinopithecus almost certainly took that to the extreme. With large dominant males leading the charge, a threatened troop could have erupted into an explosion of noise, displays, and physical retaliation. Raised hackles, deafening vocalizations, and jaw-clapping would have been the first warning, but if that didn't work, those massive canines weren't just for show. A provoked Dinopithecus, especially a protective male, could have delivered devastating bites and powerful strikes capable of injuring or killing mid-sized predators. Some paleontologists estimate Dinopithecus could have delivered bite forces comparable to those of big cats, perhaps reaching or even exceeding 2,000 pounds of crushing force. I keep thinking about the power of a single defensive circle. Imagine 10 to 20 large primates bristling with muscle, all facing outward in a united front. That's what early hominins and even large carnivores would have faced with Dinopithecus. It wasn't a creature that backed down. It didn't need to. During the time Dinopithecus thrived, South Africa was undergoing dramatic climate shifts. Forests were slowly giving way to open woodlands and grasslands, and this change presented both challenges and opportunities for such a large primate. Fossil sites suggest Dinopithecus inhabited a mosaic landscape of open savanna mixed with woodlands and riverine forests, quite similar to the environments favored by modern baboons. I picture their troop life mirroring that of modern baboons, but on a much more intimidating scale. These multi-male, multi-female groups were likely structured around strict dominance hierarchies. Adult males asserted their rank through visual displays and, when necessary, brutal physical confrontations. Some of these males weighed up to 150 kilograms. These clashes were anything but subtle. Adult males likely positioned themselves on the outskirts of the troop, forming a living barrier against potential predators. At dawn, the group would descend from cliffs or tall trees, safe havens used to avoid nocturnal hunters. From there, the day began with movement and constant eating. Fuel was a real daily challenge. Adult males may have needed up to 7 kilograms of plant matter daily. Grasses, seeds, fruits, bulbs, and tubers, all requiring tremendous chewing power. And while plants formed the base of their diet, they weren't strictly herbivores. Like their modern relatives, Dinopithecus likely supplemented their diet with animal protein, small vertebrates, insects, scavenged carcasses. But here's where it gets interesting. With their size and strength, they may have taken things further. Juvenile antelope or the young of larger prey animals weren't out of the question, and when it came to disputed carcasses, their bulk alone may have been enough to intimidate other predators into backing off. Much like modern papionins, Dinopithecus likely relied on a rich set of vocalizations, facial cues, body postures, and physical contact. With brains scaled to their size and complex social structures to manage, their interactions were probably just as nuanced, broadcasting everything from individual rank to predator warnings with a glance or a grunt. Perhaps the most compelling aspect of Dinopithecus is its temporal and geographic overlap with early human species. Between approximately 3 and 2 million years ago, as Dinopithecus roamed the South African landscape, the hominin presence was undergoing a period of remarkable change. Species like Australopithecus were being joined by early Homo. Upright walking had become well established, brain sizes were growing, and the first stone tools were appearing. This was the crucible of humanity, and Dinopithecus was there to witness it. The fossil evidence places Dinopithecus in association with hominin remains at several critical sites. At Swartkrans and Cooper's Cave in South Africa's Cradle of Humankind, Dinopithecus fossils have been found in the same deposits as Australopithecus robustus and early Homo specimens. This wasn't just proximity across a landscape. These primates inhabited the same immediate environments, drank from the same water sources, sheltered in the same cave systems, and likely observed each other regularly. The size disparity alone would have created a power imbalance. Early hominins stood approximately 1.2 to 1.5 meters tall and weighed between 30 to 55 kilograms. They would have been significantly outmatched by adult male Dinopithecus, which averaged around 80 kilograms, with larger individuals reaching up to 150 kilograms. Armed with formidable canines and superior upper body strength, even the smaller female Dinopithecus would have presented a physical threat. Competition for resources was inevitable. Both groups were omnivorous, with overlapping dietary preferences, though with different specializations. Early hominins were developing adaptations for a more versatile diet, including meat obtained through scavenging and possibly hunting, while Dinopithecus likely specialized in efficiently processing large quantities of plant materials. Nevertheless, both would have sought out the same high-value food resources: fruits, nuts, tubers, and water sources, creating potential conflict points. And it wasn't just diet that brought them into contact. Both groups favored mosaic environments, offering a mix of woodlands for shelter and open areas for foraging. Both likely needed trees or cliff faces for nighttime safety from predators. Both would have been drawn to reliable water sources, particularly during dry seasons. This shared preference for similar habitats would have end regular encounters between the species. The responses of early hominins to Deinopithecus were likely complex and situational. Direct competition was probably avoided when possible, with hominins developing greater behavioral flexibility to compensate for their physical disadvantage. This might have included adjusting activity patterns to avoid peak Deinopithecus feeding times, developing more efficient foraging strategies, or utilizing tools to access food resources unavailable to even the powerful Deinopithecus. One intriguing possibility is that the presence of Deinopithecus may have accelerated hominin tool use and cooperation. When confronted with larger, more physically imposing competitors, our ancestors, the fate of Deinopithecus always struck me as a somber tale. Imagine a troop of these mega monkeys, perhaps inadvertently offering protection to the early hominins nearby. Predators might have been less inclined to attack when faced with a group of large, aggressive Deinopithecus males. But then again, a small hominin group could also draw unwanted attention, potentially putting the Deinopithecus at risk. Around 1.6 to 1.8 million years ago, Deinopithecus vanished. Climate change likely played a significant role as expanding grasslands and shrinking woodlands disrupted their access to food and shelter. Competition from smaller, more adaptable baboons may have further contributed to their decline, especially as environments shifted to favor generalists. The emergence of Homo erectus brought new challenges. Their advanced tool use, broader diets, and overlapping ecological needs likely intensified the competition for resources. Predation dynamics may have also changed, with emerging carnivores increasing risks, particularly for the young. Disease, while harder to confirm, could have also played a part. The very traits that once made Deinopithecus successful, large size, slow reproduction, and dietary specialization, may have ultimately made them vulnerable. Their extinction mirrors a broader trend of large-bodied species disappearing during the Pleistocene epoch, not in a sudden collapse, but through a gradual decline under mounting press. Then there's the story of another impressive creature, known in ancient Greece as Inoxian dirus, or the terrible wolf. This was the dire wolf, so dominant and ferocious that even the largest prehistoric animals feared it. With jaws capable of tearing through the flesh and bones of a mammoth, it instilled fear in all who crossed its path. These apex predators were known for their meat-centric diet and intimidating hunting skills. Their dental features, like distinct posterior cuspids and transverse crests, set them apart from other wolf species. Their digestive systems were tailored for processing meat, with short intestines optimized for a carnivorous diet. Their robust skeletons, powerful limbs, and broad chests hinted at their strength and prowess in hunting, and their incredible bite force, among the strongest of any canid, enabled them to take down formidable prey with remarkable efficiency. Dire wolves roamed across diverse landscapes, from the plains of North America to the arid savannas of South America and the steppes of Eastern Asia. In North America, they hunted bison antiquus, Pleistocene horses, and large ground sloths. In South America, they preyed on large ground sloths, glyptodons, toxodons, mastodons, and extinct camels. And in Eastern Asia, they faced formidable opponents like woolly mammoths, woolly rhinoceroses, steppe bison, and wild horses. Amidst fierce competition with other predators like Xenochion, Smilodon, the American lion, and the giant short-faced bear, dire wolves fought for dominance in the food chain. At La Brea, they clashed with predators and scavengers amidst trapped herbivores, showcasing their dominance by outnumbering gray wolves 5-1, demonstrating their resilience in challenging environments. Living in monogamous pairs and hunting in packs, dire wolves displayed fierce determination and adaptability. Their hunting strategies, tooth breakage rates, and pack dynamics offer insights into their evolutionary prowess and survival instincts. Their impressive ability to hunt a wide range of prey, their adaptability, and their ferocity made the dire wolf a true ruler of the food chain. The origin of the dire wolf has been a source of debate among scientists. One theory suggests that the dire wolf arose from an expansion of the genus Canis from Eurasia. The other proposes that the dire wolf emerged from an ancestral lineage native to the Americas, distinct from the genus Canis. Recent advancements in genetic analysis have shed new light on the origins of the dire wolf. In 1992, scientists attempted to extract mitochondrial DNA from the skeletal remains of Anosian dirus gilda, a close relative of modern wolves. However, tar residue from the La Brea pits thwarted their attempts at genetic analysis. It wasn't until 2021 that scientists finally obtained nuclear DNA from 5 dire wolf fossils spanning thousands of years. These groundbreaking discoveries revealed that dire wolves represent a unique genetic lineage that split from wolf-like canines approximately 5.7 million years ago. This supports the theory of an ancestral lineage native to the Americas, distinct from the genus Canis. Despite the similarity in their skeletal structures, dire wolves and gray wolves are not closely related. This is attributed to convergent evolution, where different species independently develop similar traits. Dire wolves stand out as a unique species within the canine world, distinct from modern gray wolves. Dire wolf fossils tell a story that spans an impressive 40 million years. It all began with the arrival of the canid family in North America. From fox-like vulpinae to dog-like canini, the branches of that family tree are so diverse, and the variations are truly intriguing. I've seen reports of dire wolf fossils discovered in diverse habitats across North and South America, plains, grasslands, forested mountain areas, and even arid savannas. The most fossil-abundant areas are the La Brea tar pits in Los Angeles and the Tule Springs fossil beds in Nevada. While dire wolf remains aren't as common at high latitudes in North America, recent discoveries of Asian dire wolf fossils challenge previous theories about their range. Fossils have been found in various states, with major sites located east of the Rocky Mountains. Dire wolf fossils have also been uncovered in various locations across Mexico, particularly in the San Josecito Cave and El Cedazo. And they've been found in South America, with specimens dated to less than 17,000 years ago in Venezuela, Peru, Bolivia, Chile, and Ecuador. Then there's the discovery of a dire wolf fossil in northeastern China in 2020. It suggests a migration route from mid-latitude North America across Beringia into Eurasia. That really challenges assumptions about what might have been barriers to their dispersal. Understanding the physical characteristics of dire wolves sheds light on their adaptations and behaviors. The dire wolf was similar in proportion to modern North American wolves like the Yukon wolf and northwestern wolf, but they exhibited variations in size and morphology. Some dire wolf specimens from Rancho La Brea were smaller than the largest northern wolves we see today, but others were larger. The dire wolf had smaller feet and a larger head compared to modern wolves of similar body size, with a massive skull characterized by broader dimensions and a higher sagittal crest. Geographic differences existed too. Specimens from California and Mexico showed distinct craniodental features and limb proportions compared to those from east of the Continental Divide. Some had shorter and lighter limbs, making them less adapted for running than timber wolves and coyotes, while others possessed longer limbs comparable to the Yukon wolf. Around 125,000 years ago, dire wolves roamed the earth when the sea level was 8 meters higher than today, during the Sangamonian interglacial period. The Wisconsin glacial period followed, lasting from 80,000 to 20,000 years ago, the Ice Age, when glaciers covered much of North America. Dire wolves went extinct about 9,500 years ago. Research indicates that dire wolves evolved separately from modern North American gray wolves and coyotes. There was no genetic mixing. The reasons for their extinction remain debated, but likely involve climate change, competition with other predators, and changes in prey availability. The disappearance of dire wolves marked the end of a unique lineage within the Canidae family, and it potentially altered predator-prey dynamics at the time. Between 125,000 and 9,500 years ago, significant climatic shifts occurred, shaping the environment in which dire wolves lived. These changes, alongside fluctuations in prey populations, likely influenced their survival. They existed in diverse habitats ranging from grasslands to forests, adapting to various environmental conditions. As apex predators, they played a crucial role in regulating ecosystems, impacting the populations of herbivores and smaller predators. Their extinction represented a loss of biodiversity and disrupted ecological balances established over millennia. While interbreeding is known among wolf-like canines, studies have found no evidence of genetic mixing between dire wolves and extant North American gray wolves or coyotes, suggesting independent evolution. The exact reasons remain a subject of debate, with factors such as climate change, competition with other predators, and changes in prey availability all likely playing a role. Reflecting on the era of the dire wolf, its formidable presence and powerful bite force captivate our imagination. And in the grand tapestry of Earth's history, few chapters are as captivating as the rise and fall of the dinosaurs. These magnificent creatures dominated our planet for over 160 million years, shaping ecosystems and adapting into a myriad of forms that continue to captivate our imagination. But as the curtain fell on the age of reptiles, it gave way to an unexpected sequel, one where the supporting characters stepped into the spotlight and nearly stole the show. Enter the forest racids, more commonly known as the terror birds. These feathered nightmares emerged from the ashes of the dinosaur extinction, carrying the torch of their terrifying predecessors and proving that nature abhors a vacuum, especially when it comes to apex predators. Roughly 53 million years ago in the early Eocene, the world was a very different place. A hothouse Earth with lush forests stretching from pole to pole, filled with a diverse range of life forms that emerged after the extinction of the dinosaurs. It was in this steamy prehistoric paradise that the first terror bird, Paleopsilopterus, made its debut. Standing at a modest height of 1 meter or 3 feet, this Brazilian bird might not have seemed particularly terrifying at first glance. In fact, it was about the same size as a modern-day stork, hardly the stuff of nightmares. But appearances can be deceiving, and Paleopsilopterus had something its contemporaries lacked: potential. What set it apart was its agility and speed, traits that would become hallmarks of its descendants. While it may not have been the apex predator of its time, dwarfed by monstrous crocodilians and giant snakes, it was a harbinger of things to come. Imagine the surprise of early European mammals when a South American terror bird appeared. It must have been terrifying. These creatures, members of a dynasty that would reign for millions of years, were evolving rapidly. Just 3 million years after Paleopsilus took its first steps, Eleuthernis emerged. This new terror bird stood 50% taller than its ancestor, already a formidable predator. But Eleuthernis wasn't content with just size. It also expanded its range, something no other terror bird would match. While most stayed in the Americas, Eleuthernis ventured across the sea to Europe. Fossil remains have been found in France and Switzerland, making it the only one known to have lived outside the New World. But Eleuthernis was just the beginning. As time passed, the terror birds continued to grow, adapt, and diversify, almost competing with themselves to become larger and fiercer. The Oligocene epoch, from about 34 to 23 million years ago, marked a turning point. It was then that the family truly began to live up to its name with the emergence of giants. Paraphosaurus, a Brazilian bird, was an absolute behemoth, standing 1.4 meters tall and weighing 180 kilograms. To put that in perspective, it outweighed the largest living bird today, the ostrich. This was no lightweight. Paraphosaurus was built like a feathered tank, with robust bones that spoke of raw power. Paleontologists believe it hunted using a combination of kicks, slashes, and powerful jabs with its sharp beak, a prehistoric version of mixed martial arts. Paraphosaurus wasn't just a brute, though. Like many of its kin, it likely possessed a level of intelligence that set it apart. Studies of terror bird brain cases suggest well-developed visual and auditory centers, indicating keen senses that would have made them formidable hunters. As impressive as Paraphosaurus was, it was merely setting the stage for what was to come. The Miocene and Pliocene epochs, spanning from about 23 to 2.5 million years ago, brought the true giants. These creatures pushed the boundaries of what it meant to be a bird, reaching sizes that rivaled the predatory dinosaurs of old. 3 names stand out: Titanus, Kelenkin, and Brontornis. Each represents the pinnacle of the terror bird lineage, and each had its own claim to fame. Titanus, the youngest and smallest of the trio, was also the most adventurous. While most terror birds dominated South America, Titanus crossed the newly formed land bridge connecting North and South America during the Great American Interchange, becoming the only large South American predator to successfully establish itself in North America. This bird lived in what is now the United States, including Texas, Florida, and California, standing 2 meters tall. Imagine the shock of a Pleistocene horse or ground sloth, accustomed to saber-toothed cats and dire wolves, suddenly confronted by this alien predator, half bird, half nightmare. But as impressive as Titanus was, it was dwarfed by its cousins back in South America. Kelenken, named after a mythological Tehuelche spirit, stood a towering 3 meters tall and weighed around 250 kilograms. This was a bird the size of a grizzly bear, with a head larger than that of a horse and a beak that could crush bone. Recent studies have shown that Kelenken and other large terror birds possessed a unique skull structure known as the terror bird skull type that gave them increased bite force and pecking power. This suggests they may have been capable of taking down larger prey than previously thought, potentially including some of the megafauna that roamed South America during their reign. The title of the largest terror bird is still debated, with Brontornis giving Kelenken a run for its money. While slightly shorter at 2.8 meters, Brontornis was built like a feathered bulldozer, potentially weighing up to 400 kilograms. This made it not just the heaviest terror bird, but also the heaviest carnivorous bird of all time, and the fourth heaviest bird overall. Interestingly, Brontornis has been the subject of scientific controversy. Some paleontologists have questioned whether it was truly a terror bird or even a carnivore, citing similarities in its toe claws to those of herbivorous birds. However, recent studies have identified features in Brontornis's vertebrae that are unique to terror birds, lending weight to its classification as a member of this fearsome family. Whether Brontornis was a terror bird or not, its massive size would have made it a force to be reckoned with. Its weight likely made it slower than its more nimble cousins, but what it lacked in speed, it made up for in raw power. I imagine Brontornis as the tank of the terror bird world. The terror birds, they were more than just big, scary birds. I find myself thinking about their speed. Studies of their leg bones show a structure much like modern ostriches, short thigh bones with long lower leg and foot bones. It's a design for running. Paleontologists think some of them, even big ones like Titanus, could hit speeds over 30 miles per hour. Faster than Usain Bolt, but twice as tall and many times heavier. But speed wasn't just for chasing prey. For many, especially the smaller ones, it was defense. The world was full of big predators back then, mammals, crocodilians, and a quick escape could be the difference between life and death. This mix of speed and size made them adaptable hunters. Smaller, faster ones could chase small mammals and reptiles, while the bigger, stronger ones might have ambushed larger prey. Their senses were also incredibly developed. Studies of their skulls show they were equipped with sensory capabilities far beyond many of their contemporaries. Their eyesight might not have been as sharp as an eagle's, but it was still very good, giving them excellent depth perception, and they could see well in both bright daylight and dim light. Their hearing was remarkable. The inner ear structure suggests they were very sensitive to low-frequency sounds. They could detect the footsteps of prey hidden by dense vegetation. I imagine one standing motionless in a prehistoric forest, head cocked, ears picking up the faintest rustle. In an instant, it could pinpoint its prey and launch into action. This combination of sight and hearing made them complete predators. It's no wonder they dominated their ecosystems for millions of years. But even the mightiest rulers fall eventually. For millions of years they ruled South America, evolving into many different species. But their luck ran out. For a long time, Their extinction was blamed on the Great American Interchange, about 2.7 million years ago, when the Isthmus of Panama formed. This created a land bridge between North and South America, allowing animals to migrate. The idea was that new predators from North America, like cats, dogs, and bears, outcompeted the terror birds. But the truth is more complex. It turns out that most terror birds, along with many of their South American competitors, had already disappeared long before placental predators arrived in South America in large numbers. This suggests something else was at play. Also, Titanus actually expanded into North America and coexisted with large canids and felines for millions of years. So at least some terror birds could compete with mammalian predators. So, if competition wasn't the only reason, what was? It probably involved a complex mix of factors. Climate change may have played a big role. From the Oligocene to the Pliocene, Earth's climate was cooling, leading to a series of ice ages. This would have had a big impact on the ecosystems where terror birds lived. As temperatures dropped and habitats changed, the lush forests that many of them relied on would have given way. There's a creature from the past that still haunts my imagination. The terror bird. For years, I thought they'd vanished about 1 million years ago. Now, new fossils suggest some might have survived until a mere 96,000 years ago. Even more astonishing, there's a set of fossils that could push their existence to just 18,000 years ago. Imagine that. Terror birds might have lived almost until the first humans arrived in South America. The terror birds, despite the changing world, were remarkably resilient. The shift towards more open grasslands presented challenges, especially for the larger, more specialized species that struggled to find enough prey. The arrival of new competitors from North America added further strain. It makes you wonder how close our ancestors came to encountering these giants. What stories might have been told around the fire? It's not far-fetched to think that echoes of these encounters might survive in South American folklore. After all, other megafauna, like woolly mammoths and giant ground sloths, left their mark on human culture. This near miss between humans and terror birds is a stark reminder of the incredible diversity we've lost. If they had only held on a few thousand years longer, our understanding of the natural world would be profoundly different. Speaking of apex predators, my mind often drifts to another giant, the Tyrannosaurus rex. The T-Rex, with its seismic movements and razor-sharp teeth, has always been considered the ultimate prehistoric predator. Its reputation as the most frightening being to walk the planet endures to this day. But just how terrifying was it, really? It all started in 1902, when paleontologist Barnum Brown discovered the first known fragment of a T-Rex skeleton in Montana. This discovery sparked a wave of interest in these ancient giants. Since then, major finds like the virtually complete specimen Sioux have offered invaluable insights into the T-Rex's morphology, behavior, and scientific significance. Through careful excavation, evaluation, and reconstruction, researchers have pieced together the story of this apex predator that dominated the late Cretaceous period. The T-Rex, along with other large theropods like Tarbosaurus and Daspeltosaurus, belongs to the family Tyrannosauridae. As one of the last and most widely recognized tyrannosaurid species, the Tyrannosaurus rex stands as a key figure in the evolution of dinosaurs. They were truly enormous. The T-Rex boasted a muscular body that could reach up to 12 meters in length, about the size of a school bus. Some paleontological speculations even suggest that certain specimens may have exceeded 13 meters, dwarfing any other land predator of the time. But it wasn't just their length that was impressive. These giants stood up to 6 meters tall at the hips. Imagine this colossal creature towering above the landscape, its massive frame supported by 2 powerful legs, its head held high as it surveyed its domain. And how heavy were these remarkable creatures? Estimates suggest that a T-Rex could weigh anywhere from 12 to 18 tons. That's like condensing several small cars into the form of one awe-inspiring predator, a true testament to the sheer power and bulk of this ancient apex predator. The Tyrannosaurus rex possessed a sturdy skeletal structure with a distinct vertebral column, including neck, back, and sacral vertebrae. The neck formed a muscular S-shaped curve, supporting its massive head. Pneumatic depressions and robust neural spines provided both strength and flexibility. The forelimbs were short with 2 clawed fingers, contrasting sharply with its long hind limbs, contributing to its imposing stature. The pelvis featured a lengthy ilium and a large pubic boot, while the hind foot had an arctometatarsalien metatarsus. Throughout the skeleton, many bones were hollowed, reducing weight without sacrificing strength, a crucial adaptation for supporting its immense bulk. And those skulls! The Tyrannosaurus rex was renowned for its massive size and impressive strength, and it possessed skulls reaching up to 1.54 meters in length. That's about the size of an adult human. I've always been fascinated by the architecture of skulls, and the Tyrannosaurus rex skull is a masterpiece of brutal engineering. Those skulls featured large fenestrae that reduced weight. It showcased unique adaptations, such as an extremely wide rear and a narrow snout, ensuring exceptional binocular vision. These skulls were composed of massive yet fused bones with pneumatized components. All of this contributed to the tyrannosaurid trend of a powerful bite, surpassing that of non-tyrannosaurids. The upper jaw's U-shaped tip allowed for the extraction of more tissue and bone with each bite, though it heightened stress on the front teeth. The teeth in the upper jaw of Tyrannosaurus rex exhibited prominent ridges and tips that curled backward like cutting tools, showing its distinct heterodonty. The remaining teeth, robust and spaced, resembled lethal bananas. In mature individuals, the upper jaw housed larger teeth than the lower jaw, with the largest tooth discovered measuring 30.5 centimeters in length. Numerous small openings were observed in both the upper and lower jaws, suggesting potential sensory functions or indications of external structures. Despite Tyrannosaurus rex's reputation for its massive jaws and teeth, it's impossible to overlook its disproportionately small arms. Yet, some speculate its small arms were not useless remains, but deadly weapons used in hand-to-hand combat. Paleontologist Stephen Stanley reveals the true purpose of these small limbs, proposing that they were used as lethal weapons. With a length of just 3 ft, they had crescent-shaped claws that were sharpened to a razor edge, capable of causing deadly injuries to unsuspecting prey. Imagine the moment when the T-Rex advances towards its target with its huge head hanging above while its strong front limbs make rapid slashing movements, cutting through tissue and muscles with frightening accuracy. This new information provides a better understanding of how the T-Rex hunted, showing its skill in quickly and effectively immobilizing its prey. Once thought to be useless structures like wisdom teeth in humans or wings in flightless birds, the T-Rex's arms are now recognized as crucial weapons in its hunting tactics, adding to the fear of this prehistoric dominant predator. The portrayal of Tyrannosaurus rex in Jurassic Park movies emphasizes its poor eyesight, as characters often evade its notice by remaining still. However, recent scientific findings suggest otherwise. Paleontologists, drawing upon comparative anatomy and fossil evidence, theorize that the T-Rex likely had vision like contemporary predators like hawks, with the ability to detect both moving and stationary objects. This challenges its cinematic depiction and deepens our understanding of its sensory capabilities. Another perspective suggests the T-Rex was an adept ambush predator, utilizing its size, powerful jaws, and heightened senses to swiftly hunt prey. Conversely, some view it as a scavenger, feeding on carrion or scavenging from carcasses. These differing views underscore the complexity of the T-Rex's behavior and ecological role, fueling ongoing debates among researchers. Along with its extraordinary eyesight, the Tyrannosaurus rex possessed a remarkable sense of smell, akin to vultures today. This keen olfactory ability allowed it to spot objects up to 6 kilometers away under ideal conditions. In addition to its sharp senses, the T-Rex excelled at hunting due to its quick speed. Able to detect prey from a distance, it could pursue its targets at speeds reaching 25 mph, a pace comparable to the world record sprinting speed of Usain Bolt. Imagine yourself wandering in a primeval environment, trying to navigate back to safety with the noises of the woods echoing in the background. Suddenly, a tremendous noise halts you in your tracks. The Tyrannosaurus rex is approaching, causing your heart to race. Desperately trying to escape the advancing creature, you sprint frantically, your feet pounding on the forest floor. Yet, you feel the earth tremble under your feet as the T-Rex closes in. Glancing back, you see its massive silhouette with gleaming sharp teeth under the sun's rays. Realizing to no escape, the T-Rex's jaws close on you with incredible force. 50 to 60 teeth, each as big as a banana, pierce your skin simultaneously, sending waves of agony through your body. In that horrifying moment, you experience the true terror of being hunted by the most formidable predator to ever roam the earth. The feeding and diet of the Tyrannosaurus rex were integral to its dominance as a top predator during the late Cretaceous period. With its massive size and powerful jaws filled with serrated teeth, T-Rex was a formidable carnivore. Its diet primarily consisted of large herbivorous dinosaurs, such as Triceratops and Ankylosaurus, which were among the toughest dinosaurs of their time and were preyed upon by T-Rex. Additionally, at times, T-Rex would also prey upon other large carnivorous dinosaurs, showcasing its fearsome predatory prowess. For example, it's believed that T-Rex may have occasionally targeted individuals of its own kind or even formidable predators, demonstrating the sheer dominance and terror of this apex predator. The Tyrannosaurus rex had a significant impact on its surroundings beyond its role as an efficient hunter. Its presence necessitated changes in the behavior of other animals. Some dinosaurs developed defenses such as speed or armor to evade its attacks, while others sought refuge in dense forests or migrated to new areas. As the dominant predator, T-Rex reshaped prey distribution and population dynamics, influencing ecological balance and predator-prey relationships. The Tyrannosaurus rex shared its environment with a diverse array of other dinosaurs, each possessing unique adaptations and behaviors. Among these were Edmontosaurus, Triceratops, Stegosaurus, Torosaurus, Albertosaurus, Pachycephalosaurus, Denversaurus, Ornithomimus, and Anzu. The T-Rex's formidable presence, characterized by imagine facing creatures so colossal and powerful they seemed ripped straight from legend, not just animals, but true giants of a dying world, beasts that could crush ships and skewer warriors in an instant. I've always been drawn to the Viking Age, a period of conquest, exploration, and a surprising battle against nature itself. Armed with iron blades and wooden shields, the Vikings clashed with magnificent creatures, encounters so intense they became legends whispered for centuries. One of the first beasts these Norse ancestors regularly encountered was the magnificent aurochs, wild cattle unlike anything alive today. Standing at a towering 6 feet at the shoulder, these weren't your typical farm animals. A full-grown aurochs bull could weigh over 2,200 pounds, a muscular frame that dwarfed even the largest modern cattle breeds. What truly made them intimidating were their enormous horns, curved weapons spanning over 3 feet, from tip to tip. These weren't just for defense, they were perfectly designed killing instruments. The forward-facing orientation allowed bulls to charge directly at threats with enough force to impale a fully armored warrior or even flip a small boat. I've read that archaeological evidence suggests aurochs' horns were often kept as trophies after successful hunts, becoming drinking vessels for the most prestigious Viking warriors. The relationship between Vikings and aurochs was more than just about survival. It was woven into their very culture, leaving its mark on Norse art, symbolism, and even the warrior mindset. Hunting these beasts was a true test of courage for young Norse warriors. Unlike modern hunting, where distance and firearms provide safety, Viking hunters had to approach within spear-throwing range, close enough to smell the animal's breath. A charging aurochs could reach speeds of 22 miles per hour, leaving hunters with mere seconds to make their throw or face the consequences. Many Norse graves contain evidence of horn wounds, silent testimony to hunts gone wrong. Sadly, by the Viking Age, aurochs populations were already declining across Europe due to habitat loss and hunting prez. The last known aurochs died in 1627 in Poland's Jaktora forest, long after the Viking era had ended. But the land wasn't the only domain where Vikings encountered magnificent creatures that have since vanished. The seas that formed their highways held their own vanished giants. If you sailed with Vikings across the North Atlantic, you would have witnessed an extraordinary sight along rocky coastlines. Colonies of thousands of black and white birds standing upright like tiny sentinels. These were great auks, often called the original penguins, bearing a striking resemblance to their southern hemisphere counterparts, despite having no direct relation. Standing about 2.5 to almost 3 feet tall, these flightless birds were perfectly adapted to the cold waters of the North Atlantic. Their wings had transformed into powerful flippers that propelled them through the ocean with remarkable speed. Measurements based on similar birds suggest they could fly underwater at up to 22 miles per hour. On land, however, they were awkwardly vulnerable, waddling upright on two legs, unable to take flight when danger approached. For Vikings, the great auk represented an almost absurdly convenient resource. Unlike most prey that required chasing, these birds couldn't flee effectively on land. Norse seafarers could simply walk among nesting colonies and select their victims. Archaeological evidence from Viking settlements in Iceland, Greenland, and the Faroe Islands reveals vast quantities of great auk bones in kitchen middens, often showing cut marks consistent with meat removal. The great auk's waterproof feathers were prized for insulation and bedding. Its fat provided lamp oil, and its beaks became decorative items. A Viking burial in Norway even featured a necklace with 5 great auk beaks, hinting at both symbolic and practical value. Ironically, the bird's marine adaptations made it vulnerable, breeding only on a few remote islands, laying a single egg on rocky ground. By the Viking Age, human hunting had already forced some colonies to vanish. The great auk's final extinction didn't occur until 1844, when the last confirmed pair was killed on the island of Elde off Iceland, a sad epilogue to a relationship that began when the first Norse ships reached their breeding grounds. The birds that had once numbered in the millions, forming colonies so vast they darkened shorelines, vanished because they had no natural defense against human predation. While Vikings ventured across vast oceans, the forests that surrounded their settlements held creatures just as remarkable and far more dangerous. Among these was a distinct forest giant that many researchers now believe represented a specialized hybrid population, the European forest elk, or skogelk, a creature that combined characteristics of what we now classify as separate moose and elk species. Standing up to 7 feet at the shoulder, with magnificent palmate antlers spanning up to 6 feet across, these forest giants were truly imposing. Archaeological evidence from Viking settlements reveals distinctive antler configurations, unlike modern European moose populations, suggesting these animals represented a unique genetic lineage that has since disappeared through hunting prey and hybridization with other cervid populations. What made these forest elk particularly remarkable was their coloration and behavior. Unlike modern moose with their uniformly dark coats, I often think about how different the world looked 1,000 years ago. I imagine Viking hunters tracking massive forest elk, a vital resource that could feed entire villages through harsh winters. These weren't the moose we know today. Cave paintings suggest they had distinctive light patches on their sides, camouflage for dappled forest light. And they were apparently more aggressive, those ancient elk, defending their territories fiercely. For the Vikings, a single one of these animals could yield over 500 kilos of meat. Their hides were tougher than cattle leather, perfect for shields and winter clothes. And their antlers? Those were transformed into tools, weapons, even drinking horns for feasts. But even then, by the late Viking Age, these populations were already in decline. Intensive hunting and forest clearing began to fragment their habitat. Encounters became rare, these magnificent beasts fading into the remote wilderness. But the forest elk wasn't the only creature shaping Viking survival. Deep in Scandinavia's icy rivers lurked another powerhouse, just as valuable and equally dangerous: the gray whale. It's hard to imagine now when seeing a whale feels so special. But for Viking sailors, encountering a gray whale was often a high-stakes battle. They were a valuable prize, offering meat, oil, and bone. But hunting them meant risking everything, rowing dangerously close, where a single thrash of the whale's tail could shatter a longship. Unlike most whale species that still inhabit northern seas, the Atlantic gray whale was driven to complete extinction by the 18th century. During the Viking Age, however, these magnificent marine mammals were abundant. These Atlantic gray whales reached lengths of 14 to 15 meters, about the size of a Viking longship, and weighed up to 36 tons. Their mottled gray coloration, often covered with barnacles, gave them a distinctive appearance that Norse sailors certainly noted. What made gray whales unique was their feeding strategy. They were bottom feeders, plowing the sea floor for invertebrates, creating massive mud plumes visible from the surface. This brought them into shallow coastal waters, precisely where Viking ships operated. A single whale could yield up to 20 tons of meat and blubber, enough to feed an entire Viking settlement through the winter. But the hunt was perilous. Unlike more passive species, gray whales were known for their aggressive defense. They would charge attacking boats, using their massive flukes to smash wooden vessels. Norse sagas tell of whaling expeditions ending in disaster, earning them the nickname devilfish among later whalers. Their predictable migration patterns and coastal breeding grounds made them particularly vulnerable. Vikings, with their knowledge of coastal geography, could anticipate their movements and set up ambush points. By the late Viking Age, gray whale populations were already declining. The combination of increased whaling efficiency and their low reproductive rate set the stage for their eventual disappearance. But the Viking struggles didn't end at sea. The forests of Britain held predators just as fierce and far less predictable. When Viking longships first landed on the shores of Britain and Ireland, they entered territories where another formidable predator had long reigned supreme: the British wolf. These wolves, genetically distinct from their Scandinavian cousins, had dominated the British Isles for thousands of years before the Norse arrived. Standing taller than the Honshu wolf of Japan, but smaller than modern timber wolves, British wolves typically reached heights of 70 to 85 millimeters at the shoulder and weighed between 30 to 45 kg. Their thick, often gray-brown coats were adapted to the damp conditions of the British Isles, with distinctive white markings frequently appearing on their chests, a feature noted in several Viking-era daons. When Vikings first raided Lindisfarne in 793 CE, wolves remained common throughout Britain and Ireland, with packs controlling territories from the Scottish Highlands. I sometimes wonder what it must have been like to walk through the forests of southern England 1,000 years ago. Archaeological evidence tells a story of wolves hunted by Vikings in the Hebrides and Northern Isles. Those newcomers quickly began hunting these predators, the bones revealing cut marks. For Vikings establishing permanent colonies in the British Isles, wolves represented both threat and opportunity. Their attacks on livestock, especially sheep, made them natural enemies of settlers. Yet Viking warriors also respected these predators' hunting prowess and pack coordination, qualities they themselves valued in battle. This complex relationship manifested in Norse place names still found across former Viking territories in Britain. Locations like Olvedale, Wolf Valley in Cumbria, and Wolf Hill in Perthshire mark areas where Norse settlers frequently encountered these predators. Several Viking-era runestones discovered in northern England depict wolf hunts, suggesting these dangerous pursuits held ceremonial significance for warriors, establishing their prowess in new lands. British wolves left their mark on Viking folklore as well. As Norse settlers integrated with local populations, they adopted and transformed Celtic wolf myths into their own traditions. The wolf-warrior connection strengthened, with berserkers, sometimes described wearing wolf pelts. The fate of British wolves, however, was sealed not by Vikings, but by their descendants. As Norse settlements transitioned into medieval kingdoms, systematic wolf extermination became policy. The process began during the Viking Age, but accelerated afterward, with the last wolves in England eliminated during the 15th century, and Scotland's final wolves hanging on until the 17th century. Ireland's last wolf was reportedly killed in 1786, ending a predator lineage that had witnessed everything from the first Celtic settlers to the Viking invasions and beyond. Another animal they encountered seemed like a relic from a more primeval age, armored leviathans that lurked beneath the rivers and coastal waters of northern Europe, the Atlantic and Baltic sturgeons. These living fossils, largely unchanged for over 200 million years, once dominated the waterways of Viking territories, but have since vanished from much of their historical range. The Baltic sturgeon reached truly massive proportions, with females growing up to 10 feet in length and weighing over 660 pounds. Their prehistoric appearance, with bony plates called scutes arranged in 5 rows along their bodies instead of scales, made them unmistakable among European fish species. Most distinctive was their elongated, armor-plated snout with a vacuum-like mouth underneath, perfectly designed for sucking up mollusks and crustaceans from river and sea floors. Their immense size made a single catch noteworthy enough to feature in regional sagas, with several Norse tales mentioning heroes who wrestled armored river dragons. Archaeological evidence from Viking settlements reveals specialized sturgeon spears with detachable heads designed to penetrate the fish's armored exterior, a testament to how important these catches were to Viking fishermen. Beyond their meat, sturgeons offered multiple valuable resources. Their swim bladders were processed into isinglass used for clarifying beer and wine, as well as making a powerful adhesive. Their cartilaginous skeletons, when boiled, produced a gelatin used in Viking medicine for joint ailments. Most prized was sturgeon roe, caviar, which became a delicacy reserved for jarls and kings. By the late Viking Age, sturgeon populations were already in decline in heavily settled areas. Their slow reproduction made them vulnerable to overfishing. Predictable spawning runs and their habit of basking near the surface made them easy targets. In the medieval period, dams blocked spawning routes and pollution worsened their plight. By the 18th century, Baltic sturgeon had grown so rare that Scandinavian monarchs claimed them as royal property, a protection that came too late to save them. But as Vikings turned their sights inland, the armored giants of the rivers gave way to shaggy titans of the forest, massive beasts that carved their own trails through the dense woodlands. The European bison and its forest-dwelling cousin, the wisent. Unlike the American bison familiar to us today, these European relatives were specifically adapted to the dense mixed forests that once covered much of northern and eastern Europe. Standing up to 6.2 feet at the shoulder and weighing over 2,000 pounds, the European bison was the heaviest land animal in Europe during the Viking Age. Bulls developed massive shoulder humps covered with shaggy dark brown fur that contrasted with the lighter coat on their lower bodies. Their distinctive curved horns, though shorter than those of the aurochs, were equally dangerous when the animal charged. Unlike grassland bison, these woodland giants could navigate between trees with surprising agility, using their powerful bodies to create paths through the densest undergrowth. These natural trails, maintained over generations of use, became known to Vikings as bison roads, reliable routes through otherwise impenetrable forest that human travelers would follow. For Viking communities pushing into new territories, these massive herbivores represented both opportunity and challenge. A successful bison hunt could provide meat for an entire village for weeks, along with hides thick enough to stop arrows, making them prized material for shields and winter clothing. The distinctive hump contained concentrated fat reserves that produced high-quality oil for lamps and waterproofing. However, hunting these forest behemoths was extraordinarily dangerous. Unlike deer or smaller game, wounded bison would typically— I've always been struck by how close the European bison came to disappearing entirely. Imagine, a creature so powerful it could charge through dense woodland at 40 kilometers an hour. A single charge capable of killing multiple hunters. There are even sagas recounting entire hunting parties wiped out by these enraged bulls. By the late Viking Age, their numbers were already dwindling. Intensive hunting, coupled with the relentless clearing of forests for agriculture, forced these magnificent animals into smaller and smaller areas. Unlike the aurochs, though, the European bison managed to narrowly avoid complete extinction. A small group survived in the Białowieża forest between Poland and Belarus. Today, around 7,000 descendants live there, a direct link to the forest giants the Vikings once hunted. It's a sobering thought that the world the Vikings knew was changing even as they expanded across northern Europe. The creatures that had defined their landscapes were fading, pushed to the brink by the same human expansion and climate shifts that, ironically, fueled the Viking Age itself.